I want to say what's up to our next guest. I'm not there in person, so I get a chance to meet you. But I see you on the screen. Mondaire is in the house. Looking forward to hearing from you, the second candidate we're having running in the 17th district. We had Asha on last week, and we have Catherine Parker coming on the 12th. This is the second of the, I think, 10 candidates running for this position. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes.
You know, Paul.
I'm gonna let David take over.
So, the social media has been seeing you, brother. You've been out here.
Yes.
Hitting the streets for at least the last year.
I announced my candidacy on Monday, July 8th. At the time, the member of Congress was still in the race, and so I've been running hard since then.
Yeah. Maybe you scared
you
her
talking
off.
about,
Maybe
you talking about Nita Loisy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. For those who don't know, he's talking about the seat held by Nita Lowy. How long was she served in?
30 years.
Yeah, so,
over 30 years.
So Nita Lowy has this distinguished career, and she's been serving since January of 1989.
Yeah, she's
she's
32 years, I believe. Yeah.
I was not quite 2 years old at the time. I'm 32 now.
There you go.
She's had a great 3 decades in office, and I'm very grateful for her service.
Yes, yeah. So what we're gonna start off, because I think there's like 7, 8 people running.
It really depends on who you ask. I read a headline recently that said the 11th person has joined the race, and I believe that was Catherine Parker.
Right. So 11 people. All right. So what can we expect different from Mondaire Jones, from the 11 people?
Well, you know, for me, policy is personal, and what do I mean by that? I was raised across the Hudson River, and by the way, the district is all of Rockland County and parts of central and northern Westchester County. And so I'm, we're in Yonkers today. I was raised across the Hudson River in a small working class community called the Village of Spring Valley. It's a village of about 30,000 folks.
Yeah.
I was raised by a young single mom who, like so many women all throughout my district and all throughout this country, worked multiple jobs just to be able to provide for our family, even as we relied on Section 8 housing and food stamps. And by the way, my mom got help from my grandparents. My grandfather and my grandmother had grown up in the Jim Crow South, but they moved to Rockland County where their community embraced them. And my grandfather was a janitor in the East Ramapo Central School District, and later he was a small business owner. And my grandmother cleaned homes, and when daycare was too expensive, she took me to work with her. So now I'm running to represent the same people whose homes I watched my grandmother clean. And the reason I share the reason I share that is because when we talk about issues like fighting for a $15 minimum wage at the federal level, or providing universal child care, or making sure that everybody in this country has health care regardless of their employment status, because we know that so many people can't work and that even a bunch of folks are working and still can't afford to pay for health care, those things are personal for me. And that personal nature of these policy discussions that we've been having caused me to jump into this race before it was an easy thing to do in the way that so many people have been doing recently. It was really tough to do that over the summer, but that's the sense of urgency that I felt. And that's what I bring with me. I'm someone who's going to be a champion on behalf of working class people, the disaffected, the disenfranchised, folks who've never seen anyone who they can relate to, and certainly some folks who are not used to seeing politicians or people who are running for elected office talk about the things that matter to them. And I think I'm uniquely situated in this race to really speak to those communities and to expand upon Nita Lowy's legacy as the Democratic Party moves forward into the future.
Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. Now, I don't want to jump off into the Trump stuff in the beginning, right? Because I think it becomes a distraction to the real issues of the working people, the average Joe and Janet that's out on the street going to work every day. If you're in Congress, like what do you plan to do to help the working class person, the person that work paycheck to paycheck, pays his bills, but still is out here striving?
Yeah. I'm going to fight to make sure that in this country, in a nation as wealthy as the United States, no one has to work multiple jobs just to make ends meet. right? So, and again, that's personal for me because I saw my mother struggle. And it was not for lack of hard work in the way that so many people on the other side of the political spectrum try to make it into. We know that people who are working multiple jobs are working much harder than many of the billionaires and the ultra rich that we're seeing in this country, but we are in an economy that does not work for the average American. And that's one of the things I'm going to be fighting for. I got to be honest with you. The environment is also a huge deal for me.
There you go.
I'm 32 years old, and I'm part of a generation of young people who are going to inherit this planet that is going to be devastated by climate change because people who have been in office for a long time have failed to act with the kind of urgency that issue requires. So that's a number one priority for me.
We have a friend of the show, Paul Anthony, President U. Cuesta.
Yeah.
Big. I mean, he's run campaigns.
He's fantastic,
and he only runs with winners, and he and he wins all his campaigns. And he's a big environmentalist.
Let's go.
And he works with the county very closely.
Yep.
And he just said, Mondaire has the most progressive environmental agenda of all the candidates.
That is absolutely true.
And that's coming from Paul, which is a really big deal.
Yeah, no, many people have been paying attention, increasingly so, now that the race is an open seat for the first time in 30 years.
Yeah.
They're noticing that in addition to the environment, I'm a huge supporter of the Green New Deal, despite the criticism that often gets from people who think that it's not possible to achieve. Well, I respond to that by saying we can't afford to do anything less aggressive than that because we've waited too long to act. And so now we've got to really change the way we do business. Literally and figuratively. I mean, we've got to look at making sure that we're investing in transportation like rail and not relying on driving and taking the bus into work. And we used to have light rail by way of example in places like Ossining and Peekskill. We don't have that anymore.
Right.
But people are also noticing, by the way, that I'm the only candidate talking about criminal justice reform. And that I'm one of only 2 candidates who's made the commitment not to accept corporate PAC money. And I think it's wild that in 2019, that on the Democratic side in particular, not more candidates, and especially in a crowded race. Some people are saying 10 people, some people saying 11. Maybe by the end of the primary it'll be 20 people. But the idea that when your constituents can't see what you're doing, and you're negotiating with the pharmaceutical industry, or the fossil fuel industry, or the defense industry, that your candidacy would be bankrolled by those same industries, and yet we're expecting the policy outcomes would reflect the best interests of the American people, I think is a non-starter. And I think it says a lot that not more people, in fact, most people in this primary, in a Democratic primary, are still unwilling to make that kind of commitment. That's really sad to me.
Yeah, you mentioned criminal justice. We were both at the rally for the bail reform.
Yeah.
And you spoke about that from the congressional level. How can you support, or how will you support the state criminal justice reform laws?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that because I just spoke. So I mentioned that Rockland County, which is where I was born and raised, is in the district, and there were certain members of the Rockland County legislature, not just Republicans, by the way, which is another reminder that we ought to get the right kind of Democrats elected to office, and that it's not just enough to have a D next to your name. There were members of the Rockland
I'm
County.
glad you know what? Good for you for saying that. Good for you for saying that.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, listen. I'm not afraid of upsetting people because we really got to change the way we do business in Washington. And start speaking truth to power, even when it's people in your own party who are not doing, who need some encouragement. Let's put it that way. Who need some encouragement to do the right thing. And so the legislature, there were legislators who were pressing for a resolution, calling for a moratorium on the historic criminal justice reforms that we achieved this year. And just for context, let me tell you what some of those things are. It is an end to cash bail for most nonviolent felonies and misdemeanors. And by the way, in a cash bail system, which is a status quo, if you can't afford to post bond, then you are held incarcerated before you even get your guilt or innocence adjudicated, which is a way effectively to convict poor people before they actually get their day in court. Speedy trial reforms, making sure that folks don't just languish in jail or prison for months on end or years on end even. and of course discovery reform, making sure that I think within 15 days the prosecution has to turn over to the defense the evidence against the defendant, so that that defendant, in an environment where the vast majority, well over 90% of charges result in pleas of guilty, where these defendants are actually making informed decisions about whether they ought to plead guilty or innocent in these cases. And oftentimes, by the way, in our system, and I know this as I'm an attorney, that when you don't have good representation, you are oftentimes coerced to make guilty pleas, and we know that in the Central Park 5 scenario most famously, without that actually being the truth, that you actually without your actually having done something wrong. And so I was the only candidate to speak out publicly against this so-called resolution that was being proposed. Fortunately, it was not adopted, is my understanding. But it's really important for me, and it's personal for me, because, look, I'm an African-American male, right? I know firsthand how messed up this so-called criminal justice system is. And it's something that I worked on at the Department of Justice when I was in the Obama administration before law school, when I co-authored a report to Attorney General Holder on how to reduce recidivism for people leaving federal prisons. And also, when I was at Harvard Law School, I provided free representation to indigent criminal defendants, folks who could not afford their own lawyers, where I saw firsthand what I already knew, which is that people like me are over-policed, over-arrested, over-prosecuted, and over-sentenced for crimes that white people never did.
7 times, my God.
Really?
Wait, 7 times?
Yeah,
What the hell?
I got like 7 mugshots, but I'm a good person. No, I'm a good person. I'm a good person.
Listen, even if you had done something wrong, it wouldn't make you a bad person.
No.
We have to live in a country where we commit to the idea that if you serve your time, then you ought to be reintegrated into society. And we should not erect these artificial barriers in the housing context and in the employment context that do nothing but make it more likely that people are going to go back into the prison system again.
Do you know what I've been seeing a lot on social media, especially today? Like, people are just talking about it and complaining about, as far as that's concerned, and they're saying that now defendants can actually go have the 15 days or so to go to the scene of the crime, and they can go into the victim's home.
Yeah, there's been a lot of misinformation spread. I think
that is like all over social media
There's
now.
been a lot of intentional misinformation or lies spread about what these reforms are actually going to do.
Yeah.
And so it's just really important not to believe the first thing that you read. These one thing that's been really interesting to hear from some people, not everybody, it's just some people in law enforcement, is that, well, this issue wasn't seriously considered. I mean, as someone remarked at that meeting of the Rockland County Legislature, someone who herself had done time in prison, and who is now an activist on behalf of the criminal justice reform movement, these are issues that have been debated for years, researched for years. This isn't something that the New York State Legislature just decided to do overnight. I mean, the research and from experts in the field for and against these reforms has been considered very seriously over the course of advocacy that has taken over a decade to get accomplished ultimately in New York State. So this is not something that was just done overnight, and people have been thinking about these issues for a long time. And in fact, I was a member of the New York City Bar Association when we talked about cash bail reforms. And
you're an attorney?
I'm an attorney.
Okay.
I'm an attorney. I graduated law school in 2013. Worked as a corporate lawyer for a few years in Manhattan, and then went to the Westchester County Law Department, where I was able to litigate the county's biggest cases and serve as a legal advisor to the Westchester County Executive, George Latimer, to the Westchester County Board of Legislators, 2 of whom have now joined this race.
How close is that, man?
And also serve as a legal advisor to the Westchester County Human Rights Commission, where we began the process of talking about overhauling the human rights.
Oh, that's beautiful. I used to run the Human Rights Department in Yonkers.
Did you work with what, Mark Fang?
Yeah.
Or was you there after Mark Fang?
So I was there. When I was serving as a legal advisor to the Board of Legislators, It was in the context of active litigation and with respect to Memorial Field, which I'm sure you know well,
Exactly.
and Standard Amusements in the context of Rye Playland, but also on some legislation that different legislators wanted to get introduced.
Okay.
So I would work directly with them.
Oh, that's great.
Wait, a little disclaimer, because I said 7 mugshots. Okay, it's true. I just want obstruction of government justice and resisting arrest. It was always fighting for my people. I don't want nobody writing anything.
Listen,
you know what I'm saying?
Lorraine Lopez is a legend, and she has a
Thank you,
key
my
to the
love.
city, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
You got a key to the city?
Yes, sir. Two.
Which one, Yonkers or Mount Vernon?
Yonkers.
Okay.
She's a former city council
That's
person.
Two. Only like
Former city
this many
councilman.
people have him, and one of them is an astronaut. So you know what I'm saying?
I'm impressed. I don't have a key to any city. Not yet. Anyway.
So Mondaire, let's switch the damn, Lorraine, you just threw me off with that.
Oh God, I'm
with,
so
with
sorry.
the key to the city.
I'm so sorry.
Foreign
Charles Stern wants to know: will you accept labor pact?
Oh, yeah,
just
he
saw
already said that. Yeah.
I will accept labor PAC money, but union PAC money, what I like to call it. But I will not accept corporate PAC money, and I think there's a real big
that's
difference
what you
there.
said.
Explain, please.
When we talk about unions are comprised of working class people, everyday Americans who want the best, who want this economy to work for the vast majority of Americans, if not all Americans. Corporations do not have those values. Corporations are putting profits over people every single day, and we see that reflected in our policy. So it's just very different.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's make a switch here to foreign policy with everything that's going on. Where do you see our foreign policy initiatives failing, and you being a newly elected congressman, how can you attribute to help the foreign policy of America after we get rid of that guy? I don't even want to mention his name.
As Ayanna Pressley calls him, the occupant of the Oval Office.
Exactly. So exactly. So on foreign policy, brother. How do you feel that you can contribute to help the foreign policy initiative?
Yeah, no, I think it's very important, and just so you know, my primary focus in this campaign has been on domestic policy.
Exactly.
With respect to foreign policy, we absolutely have to have someone new in the White House, because it is the President of the United States who really sets that agenda, and I think we've seen him not just not do that, but also really erode the trust in America. People, for all the times that we are told by foreign countries that we exert ourselves too much, they really do look for our leadership. They really do want us involved in a number of things, especially things that require commitments from a number of countries all throughout the world. And to see this president really destroy our relationships with allies like France and Germany and the UK, my goodness, and also not just that, but really meddle in the affairs of countries who are developing nations and maybe more advanced nations who are just wanting to participate for the first time in democratic elections is really I think a bad reflection on us internationally, and it makes people not want to work with us and not trust us. So I think we have to start by getting someone new in the White House. I also think we should continue our aid to foreign countries in the area of humanitarian relief.
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
We've got to start seeing everybody as humans.
We got to take care of the people, man. Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm also feeling like we need to invest more domestically as we try to solve the problems in other people in other countries.
Yeah. Oh, good for you.
So I know that there's a tension there. Look, when I think about us going somewhere else and trying to eradicate poverty, I think of all the places in the United States that are in poverty.
Exactly.
Including right here in Westchester Counties.
In our own backyard, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, 2 questions. Term limits, immigration reform.
All right, let's go with term limits first. Term limits for who?
Congress.
For Congress, I am in favor of term limits for members of Congress. I am. I think I think
How long?
You know, I say that let's go with 30 years in the House. Let's go with 30.
Oh, you plan to stay there for a while, huh?
Let's go with 30 years in the House. And I don't.
Look, he'd be out at 62. He's good.
Yeah, you're gonna chill for a while. Okay, nice, very nice.
I think Congresswoman Lowy has set a marvelous example. 30 years is a great time to get a lot done, and I think that's a good benchmark. And that's not to say that I would plan on being in Congress for that long. You know.
No, you'll be president before then, right?
Oh my goodness. You know, I don't know that the presidency is something that anybody wants anymore after this president is done.
Oh no, you gotta fix it. You gotta fix it. You gotta fix it. We gotta reclaim the House.
Barack Obama spent so much time in office trying to just solve the problems that were created by the guy who came before him. Is, you know, he couldn't focus as much time as he would have liked on his own policy initiatives. Mm-hmm. And I remember that because I was part of the administration in the early years.
Right. So, I mean, how does that work, man? How do you, in a leadership, and you're too busy fighting, and you can't even get your own agenda?
Yeah.
You know, and not only that, and I'm just saying it from my observation. I mean, the first 2 years, I mean, the Democrats owned everything. They had the Senate, and they had the Congress, and they had the White House, and it was still. And I'm not saying he wasted it, but it was that 2 years just to get the health care reform.
Yeah.
You know, and they didn't jump on in anything else. And I really think there were some Democrats that just had the same mindset of the Republicans at the time. You know, they just didn't want to see this black man succeed because, you know, in the midterms, there were some Democrats that wouldn't even say that they supported Obama on the campaign trail, which was crazy. You know,
You're talking about Joe Lieberman?
No, it wasn't. It was no. It was a female. I remember it was a female too.
I was telling somebody earlier today, someone who's a little younger, that I was explaining the history of Joseph Lieberman and how he endorsed McCain in that 2008 election, and Barack Obama was so gracious as to encourage Democrats in the Senate to really accept him back into the caucus after that happened. I think that's a real testament to Barack Obama. I mean, look, not every Democrat is, and by the way, I don't know that any of that was racially motivated, but I think that that just goes to show you that not every Democrat is made the same, and we've got to start electing people. This is the argument I make. In my own district, that this is the first time in 30 years that people get to choose. This is a safely blue district. It's the first time that Democrats in this district get to choose who is going to represent them, and we got to look at the field and come to the understanding that not everybody is made the same. Not everybody's talking about the same things. Not everybody comes from the same background, respectfully. I never had anything handed to me. I had to work for everything that I've had, that I've gotten. And I think we need more people in Congress who know what it's like to be marginalized, to have to fight. Because that's what we need, by the way, someone who's going to fight with the sense of urgency
exactly.
that the huge issues of our time require. Climate change, the student debt crisis, mass incarceration, where we incarcerate 25% of the world's population in the United States. These are things that you can't just solve by tinkering around at the edges. You gotta be fighting tooth and nail for the things that we say we believe in as a Democratic Party.
We recently. I don't think this has anything to do with Congress, though. I think it has a lot to do with Senate and the governor. We recently are allowing immigrants to get licenses. I am a Republican. I am not a Trump Republican. Okay. I hate the son of a bitch. But I am not in favor of that at all.
Why not?
I am not in favor. I'm not. I'm not because I have a suspended license. Okay? No, I'm not. No.
She's hating. She's hating because she got her own damn license suspended.
No.
What?
I can. Okay, that had nothing to do with it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because
that had nothing to do with it. I have a suspended because I'm a fuck up. Okay, that's why I have a suspended license. But I just think that if you're gonna come to this country, I think you need to come here legally. I think that you need to follow the process, and
but that is the process now.
So there's a lot of,
you know what I'm gonna do, Damien? I'm gonna go to DMV and I'm gonna say my name is Maria Conchita Rivera Lopez, okay? And I'm gonna
get yourself a license.
And I'm gonna send myself a letter to my house to say Maria Conchita Rivera Lopez, and I'm going to say, this is who I am, and I'm going to get myself another license. You know what? Forget about the question. I already solved the problem.
I wouldn't suggest you do that.
I already solved the problem,
especially after announcing it on the radio.
No.
I'm
kidding, AJ. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But there was a lot.
Ay, Dios mío.
There was a lot of research that went into that. It's called the Green Light Bill.
Yes. No, let's get serious.
I was literally just talking to Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins about this. There was a lot of research that went into that bill.
Yeah.
And I was recently in Yonkers, and I saw hundreds of people literally standing outside the DMV, and it was wonderful. But the research that went into this showed that it actually makes everyone safer. Because then you don't have.
That's what I was going to say.
Then you don't have people in the shadows.
Thanks, AJ, for having my back.
Driving without insurance.
Without insurance.
Yeah.
Without insurance,
exactly.
Which is very disruptive to our economy. In addition to public safety, where people feel like they can't be at the scene of a crime anymore because they're going to get deported. So there are a lot of safety concerns that make it, and economic concerns that actually make it. Even if you disagree, and you think that people, look. No one's saying that when you come to this country illegally that you shouldn't have to go to the back of the line to get citizenship. But when it comes to the issue of a driver's license, there are a lot of safety reasons for why you want everyone sort of insured and in a registry so that people can tie you with a particular vehicle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have a question.
I mean, the bottom line, and before that, the bottom line is there are a lot of them here. And they are working, and they are driving every day. And that's just the reality of what it is. They're not what you want it to be, but that's the reality of what it is. So at least if you give them a license, and they're allowed to insure their vehicles, there's a lot of us, that have been in accidents. You know what I'm saying? You want that person, if you have a bad accident, to have insurance.
You know what? They get away with it anyways. Right now, if you're and I don't want to say an illegal immigrant, if you're not a citizen and you're driving and you get pulled over, they'll let you go. If you're somebody like me and you get pulled over, yes.
That's not true.
Let's go. Get back, Mondaire. You have it's Charles Stern, who's a friend of the show. He comes on sometime as a co-host. Of the show. He has a question. Says, are you for single payer with no private health insurance like NHS?
What's NHS?
I don't know.
I think NHS is the National Health Services they have in the UK. So here's the thing. There's been so much misinformation about single payer healthcare in this country, also known as Medicare for All. And I start with this. People talk about wanting to preserve choice. Well, did you know that Blue Cross Blue Shield or any other insurance company could send you a letter tomorrow saying that your physician is no longer in network, and all of a sudden you can't go to the doctor you love? And I think when people talk about wanting choice, they want to make sure that they can keep going to their physician, that the quality of their coverage remains the same. Well, under a single-payer Medicare for All system, you would not have to pay premiums, deductibles, co-pays. Coverage would be extended to include things like hearing aids, vision, and dental. No one could ever tell you that you can't go see your doctor that you love. There'd be no such distinction between in-network and out-of-network. And overall, Americans would pay less, on average, for the health care that they receive, and every single person in this country would be covered, as opposed to a public option scenario where you'd still have something like 20 million people uninsured in this country, which, by the way, I think healthcare is a fundamental human right in a nation as wealthy as our own.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, the question I have for everybody who's ever come on this show, I have to ask this question because this is one of the arguments. How do you pay for it?
Yeah. You pay for it by making sure that the extremely wealthy in this country pay their fair share in taxes. we are already paying the government. We are already paying for it, by the way. So, like when someone who doesn't have insurance goes to the hospital, that taxpayers have to pay that. In fact, the federal government pays for 2/3 of healthcare expenses in this country already. And so money is fungible, but we're not turning away people at hospitals. So we're all paying for this anyway as taxpayers. This is about making it more efficient and overall reducing the cost for the average American for this country.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you, but Paul already said it. He said it down here. He says it's important to recognize that you was willing to run before Nita Lowey announced her retirement. What made you decide to run against Nita? Because did you know she was going to retire, or were you willing to run against her, and why?
I did not know that the Congresswoman was going to retire. And I'll say again, I have tremendous respect for Congresswoman Lowey. But we've had some disagreements, I mean, for me, it was impeachment. Democrats were not unified around. In fact, they were unwilling to impeach this president, which is something I was very passionate about. And remain very passionate about. We had given more money to ICE than Republicans gave the year before when they controlled the House of Representatives. So I was really disappointed that Democrats weren't doing more with that. And I also didn't like the fact that we passed a budget this year that didn't repeal the SALT deduction.
What's that?
So the state and local tax deduction allows you to deduct from your tax liability the amount that you pay in state and local taxes, and that was capped in December 2017 by Donald Trump at $10,000. And we know that it's very easy in New York State and in Westchester and in Rockland to pay in excess of $10,000 in state and local taxes.
Yes.
So that was Donald Trump literally going into the average person's pocket, especially a middle class person and upper middle class people, going into their pockets and taking money out because he wanted to punish states where we pay a lot of the taxes, like in New York and New Jersey and California, states that were not supportive of him in the 2016 election. It was a very petty thing for him to do. And so it's going to be a top priority of mine to fight to repeal that $10,000 limitation.
That's great. And I want to get back to Dr. DeLacy Davis, a good friend of mine out in New Jersey. He's the founder of Black Cops Against Police Brutality. He had posted something that was very interesting on the totality of government spending, right? So when we're talking about health, right, that out of the total budget, 5% of the budget, right, 5%. This is according to Dr. DeLacy Davis. Overall budget, 57% is military, right? 5% is 5% is health. And 1% only goes to food and
my God, that's so sad.
Agriculture. So when we're talking about government spending, right? We have it, but our priorities are not in the right place on how we spend it.
Yeah, I look at food and agriculture, and I think to myself, that has to mean that probably means the food stamps, the SNAP benefits.
That he just cut. Yes.
For 700,000 people, people like my family when I was growing up, my mom and I we grew up on food stamps, and a military budget that, according to this graph, is 57% of I mean, goodness, like we can afford to reduce our military spending and increase our domestic spending when it comes to the social programs that we've been talking about in this country.
What do you think of Space Force?
Space Force?
Yeah.
What's that?
What is that?
Is that his new program?
Yeah.
That's his new. Yes, Space Force. Okay,
that was that.
Yes. Okay. So I have heard about.
He's very proud of that. Yeah. It's like a cartoon.
He's proud of a lot of things he should not be proud of.
He's such a.
Let me ask you a couple of questions that I asked the other candidate. What do you feel about campaign reform? And the reason I asked is we personally know a few people that were friends of the show who were great candidates who were grossly outspent by lesser qualified candidates, and they're not serving as elected officials because they can't afford to compete with all the money that other people are spending. So you have good candidates that, one, can't run or can't continue to run or can't compete with other people that have a lot of money because of the campaign, because of the campaign finances.
Yeah, look, I'm a huge supporter of campaign finance reform. Where do I begin? So I'll start by saying that corporations and wealthy people have way too much influence in our politics, and as a result, in the policy outcomes that we see in this country. It is why this economy is not working for the vast majority of Americans. And so for me, what that looks like is a system of public financing, so that you don't have to be a former corporate lawyer like myself, or to go to a fancy school to have a network of people who are willing to cut you checks, so that you can be a young bartender in the way that AOC was before she was elevated to the United States Congress.
I love her so much.
Yeah, and you're a Republican. You see,
oh no, I'm a moderate Republican.
She's not a real Republican.
No.
She's like a Democrat.
I'm a rhino.
But that speaks to something in our politics where people care about folks who have integrity before they get to the policy discussions, right? I mean, there are people, who maybe are more conservative than I am, but who are telling me all the time, you know what? But you're fighting for the things you're fighting for. I know where your heart is, and you have integrity, and I'm going to support you anyway, whether that's in the form of a campaign donation or a vote at the ballot box, or hopefully both. Sorry, AJ, to get back to your point. So for me, it's public financing, so that you don't have to come from money or hang out in wealthy circles in order to be able to fund what will be $1 million. Like whoever's going to win this race for Congress, and hopefully, the people who are deciding to continue to jump into this race understand this as well. You got to raise $1 million to win this race, and that's
are you almost there?
That's terrible. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible requirement that in a congressional race in this district that you have to raise $1 million to be successful. But that's unfortunately the way our politics is. And look, I've been good at fundraising so far. I don't like it. It feels disgusting, to be honest with you. Sometimes to be asking strangers for contributions, but it's just the way our system is set up. And so one of the things I'm going to be fighting for when I'm elected is campaign finance reform, so that everybody, regardless of how they were brought up or the job that they have, is going to be able to run competitively in a race like this.
That's a beautiful thing.
And that's what's going to really change. Yeah. That's what's going to really change society, to make sure that the policy outcomes work for everyday people.
Yeah.
Right.
Another question I didn't ask you that I asked every candidate. So for people that are hearing you for the first time, they want to know more about you. Social media, websites, how can people contact you if they want to contribute or volunteer for your campaign?
Yeah, so thank you for that. You can go to mondaireforcongress.com. It's MONDAIRE forcongress.com. And there's a volunteer form at the bottom of the screen. There's also a donate button at the top of the screen. Like I mentioned, we don't take corporate PAC money, so it's just so important that, especially as this December 31st end of quarter deadline hits, that we get as many and contributions and raise as much as possible to continue to be competitive in this race. If you're on Twitter, follow me at Mondaire Jones. If you're on Instagram, go to Mondaire for Congress. And if you just want to email the campaign because you have a question or you want to join or whatever, go to info@mondaireforcongress.com. The way we're going to win.
Go ahead.
The way we're going to win on June 23rd, which is the day of the Democratic primary, and it's also going to be preceded by a few days of early voting, which is a great thing as well, is by getting as many people out to vote as possible, and that's going to take phone banking and knocking on doors and spreading the word on social media. And calling 10 to 15 people and saying, you need to get out and you need to vote so we can make history happen in this race.
Absolutely. I've asked every candidate. I started with when we had a lot of judges on with 2 questions that had nothing to do with their candidacy, just to break up the monotony.
Yeah.
The two questions are: if your house is on fire and you can only grab 3 things, what would they be?
My laptop. Probably my wallet. No, nothing living in my place.
He said nothing living in his place.
And probably a photo of my grandparents and my mom.
Aww.
The second question is, if you were a superhero, who would you be and why?
Oh man. think I'd be Captain Planet, so I could.
Oh, nice. Very, Paul, you're gonna like that answer.
So I could save.
That is the first one.
So I could save
That's
the
the first
world
person who's
from
ever said that.
near destruction.
Very nice.
That is actually the first time I've gotten that answer.
Yeah.
In the 20, 30 plus years that I've been interviewing people, I've never got that answer.
And he's the first person to say the laptop too.
No, a few people have said laptop.
Okay.
People, I said my laptop. Well, I have a go bag, which has my laptop, my tablet, and all kinds of everything in it. It's my go bag.
So you just ready? You got a to-go bag just in case something like that.
Exactly.
He's ready for the apocalypse.
That's impressive.
But I mean, I run around a lot, so you never know when you're out, how long you're going to be out. So it has charges in it, it has, drives in it, it has everything I'm going to need. That's my go bag. Yeah, that's I want to thank you for your time because, everybody doesn't feel that they need to come to our show. And there's a big office that you're running for, and the fact that you took the time to come, spend it with us and allow our viewers and our listeners to get to know you a little better, we totally appreciate that. And I wanted to put that out there and wish you the best in your race. Is there anything, now you've been asked a lot of questions, I'm away on my sister's house and cooking, making my mother's baked ziti, which is food in the oven. So, is there anything that no one has asked you yet that you want everybody to know?
Just that I'm really excited about this race because we really have the chance to do the right thing. And I'm so hopeful, and I know that the people in this district, the New York 17th district, are not going to get it wrong. That by the time the June 23rd primary happens, that people are really going to realize what's at stake, and that that campaigns like mine represent the future of the Democratic Party. And I'm really grateful for the energy and the volunteerism already. And I'll just ask that everybody continue to spread the word because this is not easy. Like, I quit my job over the summer.
Wow.
I did. I quit my job over the summer, and I understand that even that comes from somewhat of a place of, I was able to save up a little money when I was working in the city. But I took a bet, and I'm still betting that the people in New York 17th District, and already this is happening nationally, there's been so much national attention on this race, are really going to recognize that we need big solutions for the big problems that we have in this country. And that I'm the only candidate really talking about that in earnest. So. Thank you.
Now, Nita Lowy has a loyal base. Evidently, since she's been in office for so long, people actually love her. So, for the Nita Lowy base, how are you more like her as opposed to the other candidates? That they should vote for you, and how are you more not like her? Like, not to put anything down about her, that people should vote for you going into the future, things that need to be done in your district.
Yeah, so that's the first time that anyone's asked me that question, and I'm glad you did because there are a lot of folks who have been, I think, trying to take these subtle digs by saying that they want to run to preserve Nita Lowy's legacy, and I think to myself, thank God Nita Lowy signed on to single-payer health care back in 2017 when John Conyers was still alive, rest in peace. And again this year with respect to Pramila Jayapal. So I'm literally the only person in this race who actually would preserve her legacy by continuing to fight for Medicare for all. I'm just really great. She has signed on to the Green New Deal, which I'm very grateful for. Not everybody in this race has signed on to the Green New Deal. And I think I'm uniquely situated to expand upon her legacy by speaking to communities that have been shut out of the political process and felt shut out of the political process, whether that's black and brown communities, the LGBTQ community, low-income communities like what I was raised in. And so I think it's really important to continue to make sure that we diversify Congress with experiences that are going to be so critical to moving the policy discussions forward and really addressing the big challenges that we have in this country. And we can't get that in a framework of politics as usual. We have to continue to bring communities into the fold because, as someone said in the presidential debate, this is really the fight of our lives. And by the way, the people who enabled Donald Trump in Congress are still going to be around in Congress even after we vote him out of office. And we need to send someone who's going to be a fighter and speak with a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Now, what can you do to expand? And again, this is not a knock to her, because sometimes when people have been in office for a long time, we have new ways of doing the new technologies, new things coming up. How are you different from her? What are you going to bring to it that is not at that district now? What extra are you going to bring that only you can do?
Yeah, I look at it from just in terms of how to be successful. That I think it's going into those communities, and I'll just speak for in terms of what I'll do. Going into those communities, spending a lot of time there, including in Rockland County, also making sure that you're serving as I think an example. I mean, people are paying attention, and one thing I'm constantly surprised by is the kind of work that even that symbols do. Right, so just my candidacy alone has engendered so much feedback from people who are saying, look, wow, you represent me. I can relate to you. How do I get involved for the first time in politics? And I think we can't underestimate the power of symbolism, especially in our politics.
Exactly.
Right? We saw that in Barack Obama's historic run in 2008. And so I've been getting that a lot as well, but it's also using, look, I mean, I would be a historic candidate, and I think there's a lot of tension around that, and I'm going to be leveraging that attention to make sure that I'm elevating the issues that are not being spoken about in our political discourse. Especially when we talk about intersectionality. Look, I'm black and I'm gay, right? And so there are things that uniquely impact communities like that and low income communities, and so it's important that we continue to raise those issues and be multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
As we come to the end of the show, last words. Anything? Like I said, anything I didn't ask you, or any last words? And say your website and everything one more time so everybody has it.
Yes, my last words are thank you for listening to me, and happy holidays. Enjoy your time with your family. That is precious time, and I know I'm going to be doing that. Again, you can go to MondaireForCongress.com. You can both sign up to volunteer and make a donation there. You can follow me on Twitter at Mondaire Jones, and you can follow me on Instagram at Mondaire for Congress.